Blog Talk Radio.
Ah, there he is. Hey, welcome to a special Thursday night edition of The Grueling Truth. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster, and this is our third straight night of shows. On Tuesday, we had Roger Craig. Last night, we had Leon Searcy. And I invite everybody to check out the Red Light Sports Network. It's got a podcast of both of those shows, and it'll have tonight's show also. Of course, I want to welcome in now my co-host, as always, Matt Andruscavage.
Good evening, Mike. Always glad to be here, and always good to talk to former NFL players about their careers and get their thoughts on what the game was like when they were playing.
Well, our guest tonight is Gary Jeter. We had him on the show last week. We talked about his uncle Bob, who was a legendary cornerback with the Green Bay Packers back in the 60s with Vince Lombardi. We decided to have him back this week so we can talk about his career. He was a 1985 Comeback Player of the Year. How you doing tonight, Gary?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How about yourself?
All right. You had me worried there. You called right at the 10 o'clock thing, man.
I tell you what, let me tell you what. I have myself worried. We need to have this show on earlier, man. At my age, staying up this late, man, it's kind of tough.
Hey, remember this, Gary. I sent you a message earlier in the week telling you we could do 6:30 if you wanted instead, and you said 11.
Yeah, but 6:30 is dinner time, so that's tough too. Oh man, but it's great, man. I'm glad. I'm glad I'm up and I'm alert and I'm raring to go.
All right, sounds good. Well, my first question is this. I mean, you went to high school in northeastern Ohio. Most guys coming out of northeastern Ohio, especially a recruit as highly sought after as you, would normally go to an Ohio State, Notre Dame, or Michigan. What made you want to attend the University of Southern California?
Well, I think it was a matter of being over-recruited. Recruiting had started so early for me, as early as like the 10th grade. Well, my high school coach and Dick Walker, who was the defensive backfield coach at Ohio State, they were best man at each other's weddings. And so what happened was these guys were always around, and I was going down to Ohio State and making unofficial visits. Notre Dame was around, Michigan was around, and I don't know, man. Just when it came down to it, when Southern Cal came, man, it was different. I'd never been to California, and went out there, and Coach Wayne Fonts was from Canton, Ohio. He was a defensive backfield coach at Ohio State. They had just won the national championship. And it was, he said, man, the sunshine, pretty women, gee, come on out here, man. You won another national championship. And I went out there, and, man, it was everything he said it was. And I just decided just to take a leap of faith, man. I just, I was kind of an immature kid at the time, man, and I really needed to grow up. And so I just went as far as I could go, man. And I went to Southern Cal, and I got the opportunity to start as a freshman, and I never looked back. Everything worked out the way that it should have worked out, but I had to take that leap of faith first, and I did.
Gary, this is Matt. First of all, I'd like to say welcome to the show, and I really appreciate you taking time to be with us tonight.
Hey, you know what? I appreciate it. I want you guys both to send me a year's supply of no-dos. Going forward, staying up this late, but no, I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
The question I got for you is, what was it like for you to play for the legendary John McKay and also later John Robinson?
It was great. John McKay was one of those. He was a no-nonsense guy, man. Didn't yell a lot. As a matter of fact, didn't yell at all. It was kind of a weird existence with Coach McKay. He rode around on this golf cart that was electric. It didn't make any noise. It just kind of hummed. On the sides, he used to have like all the years that he won the national championship: 62, 67, 72. And he always had the little golf hat on, and he had glasses, and you never knew what was going on with the guy. And then he would honk the horn, and the whole practice would stop, and everybody would turn around, point to an assistant coach. That assistant coach would run over. He would yell at that assistant coach, and then that assistant coach would run over. Say if it was my defensive line coach, Marv Gould, and then he would yell at, whoever McKay wanted him to yell at. And so everything was done, like everything was real professional. We didn't practice real long, but we practiced hard and very efficient. And the only way you knew that McKay, how he felt about you, if you read it in the paper, he used to have this saying, and it goes like, I've ever seen. Like Gary Jeter was the quickest I've ever seen, the strongest I've ever seen, the toughest I've ever seen. And if you ever saw that behind your name, I've ever seen, then you knew Coach McKay thought something about you. But other than that, man, he didn't, he never yelled at us. He gave the calmest pregame speeches. It was just a different type of existence. But in that room were some of the greatest athletes that you've ever seen. And when it was time to play, we all played.
Yeah, that was the thing about them is we had Leon Searcy from the U on last night. And, for me, growing up, the two biggest dynasties I saw in college football were USC in the 70s up until about 1980, and then the U in the 80s and the early 90s. What was it like to play at a college like that where when you stepped on the field, you just knew you were going to win?
Well, you know what? You just had that confidence, man. You just didn't, in my 4 years of college, we lost 8 times. And we lost 4 times in 1 year after we had gone 7-0, after John McKay had decided he was going to go pro. It was just one of those situations where, we had the best players. Every year, like guys like Lynn Swan and Richard Wood, and all these great players were going pro. And then they weren't just going pro; they were they were stars in the pros. O.J. Simpson was already there, and it was just one of those situations where everything they said came to fruition. So it was a situation when it was your time up, swing. You didn't even hesitate. You just, okay, fine, it's my turn. It was like, I started 4 years. Now, when I became a senior, it was like, okay, yes, I'm going to be a first-round draft choice. I'm going to go to a bad team. I'm going to go to the pros. I'm going to have a good pro career. And that's just the way it was. And everybody from Southern Cal, just like from the U, which I saw, they had this you had this chip on your shoulder. You had a little bit of polish. You had some swagger. You had all these ingredients. But, when it came time to play, the guys at the U, just like the guys at SC, we came to play, man. And it was all the years that I was in the NFL. I played 13. I was on a roster for 14 years. We led the NFL in number of players on NFL rosters. And it wasn't even close. I think the second best team was Notre Dame at that time. And then I think maybe the U passed us up. I don't even think they passed us up later. But it was just one of those situations, man, where guys just, those guys were always around. After the season was over with, the NFL season, they would come back, and you see the O.J. Simpson, and you saw the Richard Woods, the Anthony Davises, the Lynn Swan, and I can go down the list, man, all great, Booker Browns. You see all these great players that came back, and then, you were like, well, what's it like? Oh, man, hey, you know what? I played against tougher guys in college. And so you just like, when you had your opportunity to go pro, you just say to yourself, hey, you've already been schooled, well-schooled. You practiced against the best. You played against the best. And now it's your turn to step up to the plate. So don't even think about it. Just go ahead and swing. Just swing away. And that's what guys did. And it worked out.
You were talking about how USC had so many guys go pro. In 1977, when you were drafted, 3 of the first 5 players were from USC. What was your draft day experience like when you're watching your teammates get picked, and what was the overall experience like for you?
Well, it was kind of different, man, because it was already a foregone conclusion. It was Ricky went first to Tampa. Everybody knew that because McKay was already down there and he wanted Ricky. And then number 2 was Tony Dorsett. He was Seattle was going to take him, but he didn't want to go to Seattle, so they swapped that pick with Dallas. I was supposed to have gone number 3 with Cincinnati. Cincinnati didn't pay any money, and so they took Eddie Edwards. I just told them I wasn't going to come there because, they had year after year, guys would hold out, and, Cincinnati didn't pay. The number 4 pick was Marvin Powell. My college, when we were freshmen, we were roommates. He went to the Jets, and then I was selected 5 by the Giants, and I had no idea the Giants. I had never even talked about it. Been contacted by the Giants. I thought I was going to go number 6 with the Saints. Hank Stram was down there after all those years in Kansas City. Those great years in Kansas City, he was down there at New Orleans, and he had flown me down, and we had talked. So that's what I thought I was going to go. But it was different back then. You didn't go to only one guy went to New York. There wasn't really a lot of fanfare, man. It wasn't. I remember when I think about it, I remember seeing Marvin being interviewed. Naturally, Ricky got all of the fanfare, being the number 1 pick. I was being interviewed, but it wasn't really a big deal back then, man. It was as it is now. Now it's a presentation, man. It's it's like the Academy Awards and stuff. Guys are getting suited up, and guys getting watches, and driven all around New York City, and so it was a different deal. I could imagine. I think that if there was anything that I would want to do over, I think that if I could just do that draft day over and do it like they do it now. I mean, it was. It looked. They bring in. Back then the draft was on Saturday. I got a call at 9:15 Pacific Coast time, which is 12:15. The draft started at noon, and I was drafted by quarter after. By quarter after 12, I was a member of the Jump Hits. So I think, like I said, if I could do one thing over again, I wish I could do that over.
You wish you could give Commissioner Rozelle a bro hug the way they do now?
No, I don't know about that bro hug stuff, man. That's Johnny come lately stuff, man. I just give him, I think we were giving him we had the brother handshake, where it was like, we kind of go through the whole commotion, and we weren't going through all that, man. I was just looking. No, but it's nice. It's nice, man. I give Goodell credit, man, for being there, and it's a big deal, man. It's really a big deal, man. And back then we weren't making any money. Hell, we were probably making a little bit more than a janitor was getting paid in New York City. And now, these guys are millionaires, man, right away. So it's a big deal. It's a really big deal, man. And some of these guys have entourages they bring with them up to New York. So it's definitely life changing. It's definitely a life changing experience.
Well, with the Giants, in the Giants of the 70s, the one thing most people remember is the miracle at the Meadowlands game with the fumble. Herman Edwards picks it up, runs it back for a touchdown. What few people realize is I think you and the Eagles were both like 5-4, 6-5, and after that game, the Eagles go on to make the playoffs. I don't think you guys won another game. What was it like to be with that team after that happened? And, do you believe that was the reason that team fell apart?
Yeah, to answer your question, yes. I think we were both from 5 and 6, if I can recall. So whoever wins that game goes 6 and 6. We didn't win another game, and the Eagles, I think, won a couple of. I don't know. I think they had a loss or something, but it catapulted them into early success. I think they made the playoffs that year, the Eagles, and then the next year they went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Raiders. You know, but it actually catapulted us into a different direction. It catapulted us into the toilet. They ended up firing John McVay, who ended up out in San Francisco. They fired Andy Robustelli, was replaced by George Young. George Young came in and hired Ray Perkins to take over the helm. Now, Ray Perkins, I think we had one winning season in his tenure, but the framework was in place to go forward. I mean, he brought in coaches like Parcells, Belichick, and Romeo Crennel were on the defensive side. And so you could see where, the right people were starting to come in, whereas before we didn't have the talent on the field like we should have, and we definitely didn't have the coaching staff. So after that game, the offensive coordinator was fired for the Giants. Everything was shaken up. The league got involved because the Giants had become a laughingstock, and so subsequently, the league assigned George Young to come to the Giants, and now the rest is history, man. When I look back on it, I can still remember looking across the field at Old Giant Stadium and seeing the Dallas Cowboys with Hollywood Henderson and Too Tall and Harvey Martin, Randy White. Tony Dorsett. You go down the list. Roger Staubach. Newhouse. And said, man, oh man, when we ever get to that level, I said, man, it may never happen. And it was amazing. In a relatively short period of time, the Giants won their first Super Bowl in '86, and then they won in '91, and they won the two this most recent. And now they have 4 Super Bowls. And it's amazing when I think back how those events in 1979, that fumble, a game that, the game was over, man. I saw it again on TV, yesterday. It was just a stupid play, man. I still, to this day, when you don't have to run a play, why do you run a play? All you have to do is kneel on the ball. The only reason that Herm Edwards is even up on the line of scrimmage, it's a kneel down. It's like, hey, when the game's over with. And, it's one of those situations where a coach is telling a fifth-string quarterback in Joe Pisarcik to run the ball, do this what I say. If you don't do this, you'll be relegated to what? Fifth string again? So then Joe goes and runs the play. You have Zonka, and you have Zonka in the backfield along with Kokomo. And they said they're not going to take the ball. And so he does a reverse pivot, which is stupid in itself. Instead of nice open handoff, if you're going to hand the ball off, he does a reverse pivot. You have both running backs, Doug Coder and Larry Zonka, are going away from him. When Joe Pisarcik reverse pivots, he tries to reach out and give the ball to Zonka, who's not even looking to take the ball. He hits Zonka on the hip. Herm is standing right there. The ball takes a football takes a basketball bounce right into the arms of Herman Edwards, and he just strides into the end zone. And and this is what I remember vividly. I was living in Cliffside Park, New Jersey, and I was renting a room from a guy in the Winston Towers. And on the top level, there was this facing New York City. on the Hudson was this party room, and I had this party set up, man. It was just like, hey, man, you know, we're going to beat the Eagles, you know, 6-6. Hey, man, you know, we're turning this thing around. And I was going up and down and saying, hey, man, you guys come to the party. You guys come to the party. And then all of a sudden I just kind of heard this, what the, you know, I mean, I hear this, what the, you know, this, a whole bunch of what the, you know, and you can imagine what followed that. And so I turn around, I'm like, you know, I'm saying this, I'm like, what the hell is it? What's going on? And I'm figuring, you know, they're going to call the play back, man, there's something wrong, there's a penalty. Nothing was called back. The Eagles win the game, and it was just, I mean, you look at all these years later, man, we're still a part of, you know, we're still a part of NFL lore on the negative side. I mean, we're in the same category as like a Jim Marshall running the ball the wrong way and Gerald Premium, you know, throwing the interception for a touchdown in the Super Bowl as a kicker. And I mean, you know, it was just stupid, man. And you know, what's really funny is that I live right in between New York and Philadelphia. So I get a chance to listen to the Philadelphia crowd. And, you know, I am so happy, and I hope those son of guns are listening. I am so happy that the Eagles have never won anything. You know, they haven't won the Super Bowl. They've been twice. And all they do is bitch and moan and bitch and moan, and we don't have a franchise quarterback. It's Super Bowl. It's Super Bowl. Well, okay. You know what? The NFL championship used to be the Super Bowl. You won in 1960 with Chuck Berry there. God bless his soul. Great guy. Got a chance to meet the guy, man. What a tough son of a guy. Who just passed away just recently. But, you know, they haven't won anything. And the Giants have gone on to win 4 Super Bowls. Have played in 5. And, you know, like I said, I still remember it to this day, man, just like it was yesterday. And Herm is a friend of mine. Here's the irony of it. Herm showed me around on a recruiting trip when I went to the University of California, Berkeley, you know, back in 1973. He showed me around. And I think he transferred from Cal, and he ended up finishing up at San Diego State. And it was funny. He ends up playing with the Eagles. And, you know, whatever, you know, we played them twice a year. And, you know, I mean, and I think I was crying. I mean, you know, there was, you know, tears, you know, and I remember Herm saying, keep your head up. And I was just like, Herm, man, how in the blank, man, did I end up here? I said, man, after being on top of the football world, college-wise, I end up in New York with the New York Giants, a team that never even contacted me before the draft. And now that I'm a part of this nonsense. But it's funny how fate is. A couple years later, you know, when we keep drafting, you know, good players, we get a guy called Lawrence Taylor, arguably the best football player to ever play. And, man, then things turned around, man. And, you know, like I said, I look at it, I think that I can honestly say that we were the building blocks for the future. You know, I mean, you know, and, you know, somebody has to share the pain of building, and, you know, and we did.
You know, you bring up Lawrence Taylor and how you guys were the foundation for the future, which ended up being a Super Bowl win in '86. You know, what was it like in that very special 1981 season when Lawrence was drafted? Do you have any experiences with him in his rookie year you'd like to share?
Well, sure. I tell you what, it was really funny, man. I was, you know, like, I had just come off my best year as a Giant, you know, after almost teetering on bus range, you know. In the first 4 years, I had 4 different defensive line coaches. So, you know, they wanted to do it 4 different ways. So then all of a sudden I run into a defensive line coach who says, okay, man, we're going to do it this way, and it works. And I had a tremendous season. And so then now we're going to the 1981 year, and the top linebacker that I know is Hugh Green out of Pittsburgh. You know, I mean, this guy's getting all the adulations. But he's not really big. But but the guy, it was kind of like Tom Jackson, but maybe a little bit quicker than Tom Jackson at Denver. So anyway, what happens is that I run into George Young. I said, hey, George, who's the general manager, who are we going to draft? He says, no, we're going to get this kid out of North Carolina. I'm like, who? He said, man, this kid out of North Carolina, Lawrence Taylor, man, this kid can play. So I'm looking at him like he's got 3 eyes in his forehead. And I'm like, Lawrence Taylor. So I said, man, we need offense. We had no offense. We always had a good defense. I said, Lawrence Taylor. So, I said, okay. George had done a good job so far of you can see the roster starting to, turn around. So this kid LT comes in, and now Bill Parcells is the defensive coordinator. And Bill was kind of one of those guys, man, that was always talking smack, but in a good way. So he pulls me over to the side, and he says, hey, G, you're on the verge of greatness. But we need you to do some things. Hey, man, you may go with it, and you may not want to go with it. So I said, what's that? He says, hey, man, this kid Lawrence Taylor, man, he's got special skills. So I looked at him, man, and I was like, I said, Bill, I'm tired of losing, man. I said, this losing sucks. So I said, okay, if this kid can play, I'll sacrifice, some of my statistics. I'll take on double teams. I'll two-gap. I'll be a team player. And so this thing starts out, man, and I'm starting to, I'm seeing some things, and I'm taking this kid under my wing. He's just a little green, and he's busting his butt in practice. I'm saying, hey, man, looks like the kid's going to be okay. So then we start the season, man, and he starts doing spectacular things. And then they kind of set up things to where he could do even more spectacular things. And they really revolutionized the position. Now, Lawrence Taylor, I want you guys to understand this. He was a hell of a talent. But up to that point, you never saw the right outside linebacker, which is the guy that was away from the tight end, rush the passer from a stand-up position. The guy would usually drop in coverage. I would be the outside rusher. We did things like he never had trail. I had the trail. He would just run down the line. So we did a lot of things that were a little unconventional to take advantage of his talents. And I'll say this, it all worked out. He was a rookie of the year, and, just tremendous player, man. He was a tremendous player. But I will say this, it was set up that way for him to be that successful. Now, had it not worked, that would have been a different thing. But it did work, and the rest is history. And, a great guy, a lot of problems off the field, but really a good guy, man. I will say that. He's really a good guy. Just seems like he, sometimes he takes one step forward and then 2 steps back. But just a tremendous, tremendous player, man. Just really kind of hard to describe, man, the talent level. God gave him a bucket full.
Well, real quick, I want to bring up the fact we got about 35 seconds left on the live show. If you're listening now, when the show's over, about a half hour, 45 minutes after, you can hear the rest of our interview with Gary Jeter. And remember, next Wednesday night on The Grueling Truth, we'll have Dennis Smith, former All-Pro DB with the Denver Broncos. Now, my question is this.
That's an SC guy. That's another Trojan there. That's a Trojan there.
I know. We got all kind of guys from USC.
Hey, tell Dennis I said hello. Tell him I said hello, too.
All right, I'll definitely do that. My question is this. You had a few injury problems. You ended up going to the Los Angeles Rams, where you played with one of the greatest running backs of all time, Eric Dickerson. 1985, you were the NFL's Comeback Player of the Year. Leads me to my question. The 1985 NFC Championship game. I always hear people say Pete Carroll made the worst call in NFL history. If people believe that, I mean, in 1985 championship game, you guys are down 10-0. You get a turnover. You get the ball down, I think, inside the 10-yard line or so. And with 30 seconds left, the Rams offense goes into a huddle, and they don't run a play till the 12-second mark. Eric Dickerson gets tackled at like the 3-yard line, and no timeout is ever used. And John Robinson went to halftime down 10-0 and still had a timeout in his pocket. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Not really, but I will. I
know you do. We've had this discussion before. You always say that, and I know you want to talk about it.
Well, here's the situation, man. I mean, the Bears had the best defense that year. We were the second best. Tremendous players on defense. Average offense by the Bears. I felt that if we could have got some points, any points, 3 points, any points on the board at halftime, we go in at worst, we're down 10-3. By us going in down 10-0, zero momentum from our offense, almost from the standpoint where they were scared. We had all those all pros up front with Jackie Slater, Dennis Harris, blah, 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 Eric Dixon running the ball. And they couldn't bust a grape. And we were holding on defense, playing up there in Chicago. I didn't understand what was going on, man. I think it was one time, and because John Robinson, great coach, man. But I just think one of those times where his ego got the best of it, and instead of saying, okay, hey, let's think logical right here. This could be a momentum chaser. I mean, a momentum boost, and we could just get some points on the board because they had shut out the Giants the week before. They ended up shutting us out and almost shut out the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
Patriots.
So they were on quite a roll. But if we could have got some points there, man, possibly, maybe not. It could have been a different story. But I mean, without question, a major blunder. I mean, and I tell you what, I was so upset at that game. My Uncle Bobby lived in Chicago. He retired with the Bears his last 2 years. And so I had seen him before the game and seen his sons, and matter of fact, they were all at the game. I didn't even go back with the team, man. I just looked at these guys. We had all these stars on offense, and sometimes, man. Okay, you know what? I expect it to be like a heavyweight fight, like somebody would throw a punch and then we throw a punch, and punches were thrown back and forth by our offense and the Bears defense. Well, let me put it like this here. Our offense punked out against the Chicago Bears. The Bears were good. They weren't that darn good, and I'll say that to the day I die. They were good, but you know what? If you're good, at some point, man, the cream has to rise to the top. Our cream never got out of the refrigerator. I mean, it was really sad. I didn't even go back. I didn't go back with the team. I ended up staying there. And one thing I did, I stayed at my Uncle Bobby's house on 71st and Paxton, right off downtown off Lakeshore Boulevard. I stayed up and watched every single Chicago Bears going to the Super Bowl program. It must have been till like 4 o'clock in the morning, because I just knew that our time was going to be coming, maybe 86, 87, 88, and it never happened. And that was our shot, man. That was our shot. I mean, it was just like the Bears. They won in 85. They never win again. And it was just, I think that if I do have a bitter taste in my mouth about something, even aside from that fumble, it was the fact that when you have, we had the talent. We had the manpower to get something done, and we didn't get it done. And so that was what the thing that really bothers me about that. And it all stemmed from us not getting those points. Some points. You got the best running back. You got 4 all-pro offensive linemen, and they can't bust a grape. And we end up not scoring any points and we go into halftime down 10-0, and we still have a timeout in our back pocket. Inexcusable.
No, for 1985, with you being the comeback player of the year, what was it about that year, or how? I guess I'd put it like this: as you were going through the season, were you just fully healed from your injury? What was it about that year that made it special for you that you were able to be the comeback player of the year?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. I was traded to the Rams in 1983 and had a really good year. In 1984, I got married in the Bahamas. So I got married in New York and honeymooned in the Bahamas. And while on the fishing trip, man, I hurt my back, trying to yank dolphin mahi-mahis into we ran into schools with mahi-mahi. I ended up hurting my back. Wasn't in good shape to go to training camp. And so Herb Pankey from Penn State, we used to have battles in practice, and they were real good competitive battles. And my back just went out. And then all the doctors told me that I would never play again. And that was 1984. So really, technically, I missed the whole year. I came back at the end, man, but, I was overweight, and I think I played a couple plays. And so, they had pretty much wrote me off. And what really pissed me off was, here I was, going into this would have been my 9th year, I believe it was, something like that. They invited me to training camp. They had me come to training camp with the rookies. Now, imagine that. Now, they only have veterans come in with the rookies if they're trying to get, guys that are injured like me or guys kind of on their last leg or whatever. And I was looking at this like, man, what in the hell am I doing here with the rookies? And I was so angry. But the one thing was I started working out on my birthday, which is January 24th. And I just said to myself, hey, God, you know what? I may not make it to training camp, but I tell you what, I'm gonna bust my butt until the sand runs out of the hourglass. And from that point on, man, I became, I could have wasted some years, I could have wasted plays, but from that point on, I didn't waste a practice down, a play in the game, a lift, film study, or anything, because I did not know when the end was going to come, because I just thought I was on borrowed time. And I just continued to play with a passion. I played angry, I played upset, and this thing worked out. And it just wasn't 85. It was 86, 87. I mean, I had some of my best games and my best years in 85 on. And then when I hurt my back again with the Patriots, and the doctor said, man, I had 2 bulges in my lower back, I just quit. I said, man, I can't, I said, the last thing I want to happen is I don't want them to carry me off this field. I said, if anything, I said, getting hurt is a part of the game. But the last thing I wanted to happen was them to carry me off the field. And that didn't happen. And so then I just ended up retiring, man. And I remember Charlie Casserly. I saw him on NFL Network tonight. He was the general manager with the Washington Redskins at the time. And this would have been like 1990. And he called me up, and it was the first week of the NFL season. And he says, Gary, they'd really like to have you down in Washington. Can you still play? And, I could still play. But I just told Charlie, I called him Coach. I said, Coach Castle, I said, I appreciate the phone call. I said, I can't play anymore. And then that was it. My career was over with. I had no regrets. All the sand had run out of the hourglass. And I said it was time to do something else.
Well, we got about 3 or 4 minutes left here. I mean, one question I know Matt likes to always ask people is, who was the guy that gave you the most trouble, as a defensive lineman in the NFL.
I tell you what, that son of a gun, Mike Ken, man, from the Atlanta Falcons. You know, guys don't know about this guy. I used to call him Gumby. I called him Gumby because Mike was 6'7", and he was a lean 6'7". And you know how they say that prize fights, the styles make prize fights. You know, like Buster Douglas and Tyson, and you know, I mean, there was just, you know, he ran into the wrong guy on the wrong night. Tyson did. Well, my style was more conducive. I mean, believe it or not, going against those big steroid guys that would try to take my head off. I would use my leverage, my strength, my quickness, and I would really use their weight and their strength against them. But when I faced Mike Ken, he was kind of one of those guys where he didn't really attack. He kind of absorbed the blow. And he was good at holding. You were allowed to hold. I mean, as long as you were holding the right spot. He had really good balance, and he was really, really difficult for me to beat. I mean, when I think about it, you know, Mike played about 18 years in the NFL with the Atlanta Falcons. Never went to the Super Bowl. I think he went to Pro Bowl numerous times. He had a really quiet career. But he was a tremendous player. Number 78 with the Atlanta Falcons. I think he played his whole year with the Atlanta Falcons. But he was my toughest. You know, he was my toughest year after year. Player that I ever had to play against, Bob Young from the old St. Louis Cardinals. Bob was 6 foot 300 pounds back when 300 pounds was like 30 pounds heavier than normal. And his brother was the strongest man in the world, and Bob wasn't far behind. And, he was the only guy that I could say I was scared of, but Bob never knew it. He never knew it because, man, hey, I didn't mess around with Bob. Hey, you know, if Bob tried to come get me, now I got away from Bob. You know, there was, you know, Dan, he was so strong. You know, he was so strong. He had tremendous leverage. Bob was the tough guy. Bob was tough. He never said anything. But he was like, man, he was a tremendous player. You know, so I would say those two guys there, man, those two guys there were the guys that man, you know, oh man, you know, when I got Bob this week, man, this is gonna be tough. Or I got Mike this week, you know, I mean, I had to be like extra sharp. I wanted to be extra sharp. I wanted to make sure that the game was on. So that was those guys are super tough.
All right. Well, hey, Gary, it was a pleasure and an honor to talk to you. I mean, anytime you want to come on the show, we'll even move it up during the daytime for you if you want. We'd love to have you back sometime.
I tell you what, I usually get up at 5 in the morning. That'd be a good time. No, I'm just kidding.
I can do 5 in the morning. I usually got to get up at 5:30 with my kids anyways.
Okay. Hey, you know what? I tell you what, it was an honor. I'm honored. You know, anytime that you can be remembered for something that you did, like almost a lifetime ago, you know, and you get the opportunity to tell people, you know, I mean, that's an honor. And, you know, I was just so happy it worked out. You know, we got a half an hour in last week, and we got an hour and a half. I think we got an hour in this week. And I tell you what, anytime you guys, 45 minutes, anytime you guys, you know, I mean, obviously, I'm not I'm not shy about talking, you know, so anytime you guys would like to have me on, you know, I'll tell you the truth. You know, it may not be what you want to hear, but it'll be the truth.
Well, that's why they call the show The Grueling Truth, Gary. You're perfect for it.
Okay, well, that's good. I look forward to it, man. And, hey, man, you guys do a great job, man. You know, keep up the great work.
All right. Thanks a lot, Gary.
Thank you, man.
Thanks, Gary.
God bless.
All right. Just remember, next Wednesday night, 11 o'clock Eastern Time, 10 o'clock Central, we'll have Dennis Smith, former Pro Bowler from the Denver Broncos.